So, following a couple of my earlier videos which highlighted the performance of different FAT-XEX loaders, we've now got a second firmware revision from Temp, who is the creator of the AVG card, and this time he's slashed the search times on the massive atarionline.pl search test from over 4 minutes down to about 15 seconds or something, which is absolutely incredible. And there's absolutely nothing I can do to match that. I mean, in a separate video, I managed to shave best part of a minute off the search time in the side loader, but beyond that, I mean, I'd have to speed things up by, 1,000%. It's just crazy. So I'm just going to have to admit defeat. Or am I? So while it's clear that the newest AVG firmware just leaves everything else in the dust, and is doing exactly what I suggested in the prior videos that I made, which is to say it's improving the user experience just across the board, I get this feeling as well that he's gone a stage further than that and sort of feels he's achieved some sort of moral victory somewhere. I don't know where I'm getting this idea from. I can't quite put my finger on it. So as I mentioned in earlier videos, devices like the Uno card, Ultimate card and the AVG card essentially use a kind of a coprocessor approach to things, whereby you have the loader front end running on the Atari itself, and it's communicating via message passing with a much more powerful processor on the cartridge itself. So in all three cases, this MCU on the cartridge is doing all the heavy lifting when it comes to handling the FAT file system, long file names, directories, etc., etc. And in the case of the AVG card, it's doing the search as well. Now don't get me wrong, in a single firmware revision, reducing the time for a very, very large search from over 4 minutes to around about 15 seconds is some achievement, regardless of how powerful the hardware is. It's actually almost an even bigger achievement than managing to make the job take 13 minutes on an earlier revision of your hardware. I'm not even sure which is the bigger attainment, but very impressive nevertheless. But with a base clock of some 100 megahertz, I would kind of be surprised if it wasn't wiping the floor with everything else. So the first thing I thought about using was this Nucleo dev board that Robin Edwards, otherwise known as Electrotrain, sent me about 27 years ago. Of course, I'm going to get around to doing something with it very soon. This one, I think the ARM processor, it's more powerful than the one on the Uno card, so it probably runs at, I don't know offhand, 300, 400 megahertz. I'm not too sure. It could be even quicker than that. But I'm still not sure that this is going to decisively beat the time on the AVG card. So one thing I've noticed when using this Core i7 MacBook Pro from 2014 is that it has so much computing power, it's able to search for files on SD cards at a really incredible speed. I thought, well, why couldn't we simply strap this computer to the back of the Atari somehow? So all the Atari would have to do is send a message to the MacBook, which would host the SD card, asking it to find the data that it needed, and when it had finished, the MacBook would reply to the Atari and simply send it back, probably about 1 second later. This is really essentially what message passing protocol really is. But of course, the MacBook's a little bit unwieldy and doesn't really fit well in the cartridge port, so I figured I need to think of something else. As luck would have it, I had an old Core i5-2310 CPU lying around, which I think runs at about 3 gigahertz, and it has 4 cores on it. So if we can somehow get this attached to a multi-cartridge for the Atari 8-bit, I think we're going to be onto a winner. So as we can see, the Intel Core i5-2310 processor that I'm proposing to use here should handily outperform the Spartan 6 FPGA used on the AVG card. And what I'm expecting here is search times for the larger archive, probably in the region of the sub 1 second range. So if we're going to use an Intel i5 2310 CPU, we're going to need to cool it somehow. If we're going to strap this CPU onto this device. The cooling solution I've come up with at the moment, because I don't have a water solution, I do think a liquid solution is going to be required here in the long term, but in the short term what I propose to do is strap this heatsink to this device like this, and as you can see I've got an Atari 8-bit computer here, and the whole thing should fit quite nicely into the top of the unit. But of course, those of you who are rationally minded are probably looking at this and thinking, John, what an absolutely ridiculous proposition this is. And well, actually I have to agree with you, because of course, who wants to use compact flash cards in 2020? The more sensible thing to do would be to put this CPU on a device that uses SD cards, which are, you know, after all, this is the modern world. So I'll be soldering this CPU onto this device and putting this heatsink on top of it. The only other thing I need to worry about is a power supply, but I'm fairly sure we can rig something up with an externally mounted ATX PSU to get this thing working. So yeah, I'll make a follow-up video when I get this thing finished and working, and if I do get the kind of results and performance that I'm expecting, well, it's just going to be on a stock 8-bit Atari. It's just going to be mind-blowing, frankly, totally mind-blowing.